Well, welcome to another edition of Spirits in the Material World. I'm your host, Sean Blankenship, and coming to you live from the Paraces studio in Mississippi. Let's go, Mississippi. I'm excited today because we're going to talk about a real material spirit, whiskey. And with me, I have my son, one of my twin boys, actually, Wyatt Blankenship. Wyatt, say hello to everybody.
How's it going? Happy to be here.
So, before we get started, why don't you give everybody a little bit of a background, a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I have a BSN. I went to school for nursing. I'm a very atypical nursing role currently. I'm a clinical educator, which is a fancy way of saying I travel across the United States and visit different hospitals. So outside of work, I dabble in a little bit of whiskey.
How about that? And you did a little bit of travel nursing too, right? You've been around the country a little bit.
Yep. Started out in Austin, Texas, and kind of worked my way around and found my home at the tip of the sip.
Tip of the sip. All right. Well, this is going to be an interesting one. We're going to start our way into a discussion about whiskey, and there's no way we're going to get through it all. So we're gonna do our best to really touch on some of the basics without assuming anybody in the audience, anybody listening, rather is a whiskey aficionado, somebody who's tried whiskey,
Right.
somebody who knows. There's always be some experts on here that could jump in and maybe raise their hand one day and say, "Hey, I want to do a podcast with Wyatt."
Right.
So this will be fun. And then we'll end it up with a couple of tips or some surprises you have for people.
Fun facts.
Some fun facts that would be cool. So let's kind of let's get it. Growing up, all I saw with Western movies, the John Wayne days, was people walked in and bellied up at the bar and said, "I'll have a whiskey."
Right.
It's whiskey. And it was never like a brand. It was never a type of whiskey. It was just, they had dirt, dust all over them, the froggy throat, working all day, and they just wanted a whiskey. And sure enough, bartender put a whiskey down. I have a feeling those days have progressed. It's a little more complicated than that now.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, you go into a liquor store and, there's 100 different types of whiskey. So
easily.
Wyatt, walk us into, let's say I don't know anything about whiskey and I'm like kind of interested in it. It's romanced all the time in movies. It's sexy. Start from the basics. What is whiskey?
Yeah. So, ground up, just keep it basic for today's episode. Whiskey is a distilled alcoholic beverage. It's a distilled alcoholic beverage made from fermented mash. With whiskey, that's typically a few grains. So barley, corn, rye, and wheat are those you typically see. Not to say there aren't some that are a little different or atypical, but something that makes whiskey different from, let's say, vodka or another spirit are those grains. Something that you see in vodka is usually potatoes, not always potatoes. Ciroc, shout out Ciroc, some grapes in there. Tequila, agave, rum, sugarcane, molasses, those sort of things. So from then, whiskey's a little bit different in that it has to be aged. So not everything has to be aged like vodka or tequila. Tequila can be aged, but doesn't have to be. Barrel aging is where whiskey is separated. So we, in bourbon, for example, use American white oak, new charred American white oak. And not to jump too far ahead, but I'm sure we'll talk about that next.
Okay, so it's kind of like steak, right? You can get grass-fed, you can get corn-fed.
A5 Wagyu.
Yeah, well, you can get different types. So obviously there's different ingredients in whiskey. So take us through, um, you know, I know, for instance, bourbon is usually what you hear people ask for if they don't say, I'll have whiskey, right? Typically, you hear
Right.
people say, I'll have a Jack and Coke. And it's like, okay, that's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about sipping whiskey and understanding the different nuances between, like you said, wheat or corn,
Malted barley.
malted barley. So take us through the different sort of taste varieties that you're going to get when you get those things and translate them so people can listen and go, oh, that's so when somebody says, I'll have a bourbon, that's what they mean.
Right. So bourbon, I mean, just your bare bones, run of the mill bourbon. Let's just say, for example, Evan Williams right now, or Jim Beam Black Label. That's what a lot of people out there will be familiar with. If not, they see it in their grandparents' cabinet, typical stuff. Bare bones, run of the mill bourbon. You're going to get some of those sweeter caramel, vanilla, maybe a little bit of oak forwardness notes that you're going to pick up. For most people that aren't fans of whiskey in general, those are going to be those key notes that are a little off-putting maybe for them. But that's kind of when you think of whiskey or bourbon in general, those are the notes that you should be picking up or probably will come across more frequently.
Got it. Okay. So you talked about bourbon. So there's scotch, right? You hear people say, I'll have Scotch whiskey. Okay. Well, that's
Scotch,
definitely not from America.
right? Japanese,
Japanese.
Irish,
I love, there's some good Irish
right,
whiskeys out
right.
there.
Bourbon,
Redbreast.
rye, Tennessee whiskey.
Oh,
I mean,
there's Tennessee whiskey. There's rye.
yeah, yeah.
So
I can
tell
go
us a
all
little bit
day.
of, just give us a little bit of
Fundamentals.
fundamentals on some of those. Why is it, how can it be whiskey if it's not here in America?
Right. So whiskey is all encompassing. I know, and that may be confusing to some folks listening, because to most people, bourbon and whiskey is synonymous. That they're the same thing. Whiskey is that classification. It's not
Like a category.
correct. Scotch, for example, comes from Scotland. Typically 100% malted barley. For like a single malt, for example. There's some blends that may incorporate some other stuff. They have their own rules. I think it, must be 3 years aged or something like that. Don't come for me. Japanese whiskey, similar to Scotch, use malted barley. They like to do different oaks, from my understanding. Might butcher this, but Mizunara. Mizunara is like an example of one of the oaks that they use. So you get some different flavors from Scotch, from Scotland. Tennessee whiskey, similar to bourbon. We can get into mash bills and stuff, but Tennessee whiskey is similar to bourbon, 51% corn minimum, and it has to go through what we call the Lincoln County process.
Oh, tell me about that.
So the Lincoln County process basically is a fancy way of saying that it has to be filtered through charcoal before aging. Some popular distilleries that use this process are Jack Daniels and George Dickel. So
Okay.
I encourage anyone out there, if they can, if they're able to, go visit Jack Daniels. You can see the process of how they get that charcoal. It is super neat. For simple purposes, they have this burn pile of pallets, and you get to watch them set it on fire. It burns. They come and get all the charcoal, and you get to see the actual charcoal that they use when filtering their whiskey
Very
to
cool.
make it Tennessee whiskey.
That's very cool.
So obviously, I'm a little partial to Tennessee whiskey.
Okay, so bourbon, Scotch, Japanese, Irish. What is rye? You mentioned rye.
Right. So bourbon, let's backtrack. Bourbon, because this will kind of put things into perspective, a little bit of imagery for people out there. Bourbon has its own rules. 51% corn. I kind of mentioned that, touched on that earlier. So it has to be aged in new charred oak, American white oak. 51% corn. So it can't be 50, can't be 49. Has to be 51% or higher, bare minimum. So that's what bourbon is. the most simple way of putting it
Okay.
for those people out there
All
at
right.
home. On the opposite side of the spectrum, because again, bourbon typically has the corn, rye, malted barley. Rye is its own classification, and it has to have 51% rye.
Ah,
It can have more, it can have less, you know. And then there's all these subcategories. You'll see high rye bourbons, you know, stuff like that. But yeah, that's rye. It has to have 51% rye, and it has to be aged in charred oak barrels, like bourbon.
got it. And they have to be
Right.
new. If I
They have
remember,
to be
okay.
new, correct.
So you can't just keep reusing the same barrel.
No, I can't go get that maker's barrel we have in the garage out there, fill it full of whiskey, and call it bourbon or rye. Has to be new.
Interesting. And not to get too sidetracked, but if I'm not mistaken, the French like to buy our bourbon barrels for their winemaking.
Yeah.
Because they've only been used once,
right.
And they have a certain flavor. I could be wrong,
and
but
vice versa.
Yeah, I think it could go the other way too, right?
We buy wine barrels and put whiskey in them too.
Interesting.
And I'll backtrack a little bit. I want to say rye. I'm not sure they're as strict as bourbon where they have to be new. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
But bourbon for sure has to be brand new barrels.
Brand new barrels.
Brand new
All
barrels.
Right. Yeah. You know, it's so intimidating. I mentioned going into a liquor store. All the labels are so cool.
Right.
It's like, so are all these in America, are all the whiskeys coming from Tennessee and Kentucky? Because you hear about those two the most.
No,
could they come from anywhere?
We could really spend a whole other podcast episode talking about all these cool distilleries, all these non-distilling producers, which is, you know, another whole rabbit hole. But no, short answer is no.
Okay.
I mean, Kentucky's that's kind of one of my fun facts. Kentucky is one of the biggest. I want to say 95% or so of bourbon specifically comes from Kentucky. You know, I would bet on majority of the Tennessee whiskey coming from Tennessee, obviously. But like Indiana is another big, huge producer most people don't know about. MGP, Ross and Squibb, they come out of Indiana, Lawrenceburg, Indiana.
How about that?
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. So regionally, we've got different so the category is whiskey, but regionally it's different depending on the ingredients, depending on the process. Obviously, in state law, it sounds like
it's much like the FDA.
Yeah.
You know, there are very strict rules and regulations around certain categories of whiskey, like bourbon. You know, we can get into bottle and bond another episode, but that's again, there's cool little
nuances.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I'm interested. Growing up, I didn't drink whiskey. I never even tried it. I don't think until I was in my 40s. All right. Well, you're not 40, obviously. Right. I mean, so how did you approach whiskey? Like, how did that happen?
It's a good question. So I honestly think it was one of those, you know, you see it on TV, you see it in movies, you know, Westerns, John Wick, you know, all these movies, they're drinking whiskey. It's the man's drink. It's the American drink. And so, you know, that curiosity is always there. I would say maybe when I was around 25-ish, wanted to start liking it. Maybe didn't appreciate it like I do now, but wanted to start liking it. So, you know, dabble, try some, maybe make some cocktails, that sort of stuff. And it wasn't until maybe 3 years ago or so to where I started really being able to pick up notes and really appreciate whiskey and figure out what I like, what I don't like. It brings people together. So, you know, there's the social aspect around it. There's these cool craft distilleries. There's all sorts of just quirky stuff surrounding whiskey that really it draws people.
So was there, I mean, it's not something that you just pick up and start drinking, right?
Right.
I know, and I don't drink whiskey, but I know there's some whiskeys that you've had around, and I've said, hey, let me try that.
Right.
Woo! Boy,
light you
it
up.
hit, man. It hit the back of the throat.
Yeah.
It hit the nostrils. I'm like, okay, put that in my car. That will
Right.
start my
High
car.
octane stuff.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell me about, like, for somebody starting out, what's a good approach, and how can they figure out, like, what's a good place to start, and how would they know if it's good or not?
Right. So, and that's not super uncommon either. Again, it took me a while to start appreciating. There's a difference between tolerating and appreciating, big time. So, if I was talking to someone right now in the whiskey aisle, and it's intimidating. Maybe they want to start getting into it. How to really appreciate whiskey? I would start by advising them pick a low proof, maybe something low cost, not bad, but low cost, great tasting whiskey. In essence, taste the rainbow. So I might say pick up a Jack Daniel's single barrel. So there's your Tennessee whiskey right there. Pick up a Michter's single barrel rye. So there's your rye. And these are all, they should be under $50.
I was going to
So
say,
you're not going to be
okay,
killing yourself if you hate it, or, and we'll kind of jump back to that. Evan Williams bottled and bond. There you go. You checked off a bottled and bond, 100 proof whiskey. Buffalo Trace, a lot of people's favorite. Woodford double oak. There you go. You're trying a double oak, a different niche. Maker's 46, French oak finish, Still Austin, they've got some red corn, some blue corn. So again, you just pick up some variety. Four Roses. These aren't going to break the bank. They're going to be great whiskeys, and you're going to figure out what you like versus don't like, not what someone's telling you you need to like or not like.
right.
Figure it out for yourself. From there, I would say grab a Glen. Grab one of those glasses you got over there.
Okay, so what I'm holding in my hand right now is something that to me kind of looks like a can of flame.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a large glass. It probably in total could hold 4 ounces, maybe, but you're only going to put an ounce and a half or something in it
just
right
a
there.
standard pour.
But tell me why. Why am I drinking out of this? What's the benefit here?
Yeah. So for those of you at home, it kind of looks like a light bulb, as it sits upside down. So wider at
Oh
the
yeah,
bottom,
that's a good
skinnier
description.
at the
Yeah.
top, and it's built for nosing. So you can really nose, get some of the notes that come off, because a big part of taste is smell. So, but you can
Right.
do those separately, kind of pick up and you'll notice some whiskeys have a great nose, but don't really follow with the palate, or vice versa, But basically, it's kind of your whiskey 101. Grab a Glen, that'll really help you pick up some of these things that you wouldn't in a standard rocks class. And then back to what your original question. This is a no judgment zone, so maybe start off with those. Start off with a Glen, work your way up to maybe something higher proof. And again, not to jump too far ahead, but we have cask strengths and full proofs and stuff like that we can get into in another episode. Maybe start off with or graduate to one of those. See if you're ready. Pick one of those up, something higher proof, and then worst case, my motto is you can always add some water. You can always add a cube of ice and proof
Tone
it
it down
down.
a little
You
bit.
can't proof things up, but you can proof it down. And who knows? Sometimes you pick up different things that you didn't notice the first go around. Once you add some water, it tends to open things up. Just a few drops,
Right.
And again, it's a no judgment zone. Have fun with it.
See, so okay, all right. Let's try to. You put a lot. You just packaged a lot of stuff into that right now. So you enter this topic of proof, watering it down, things like that. So if I'm going to ease into it, right? If I'm going to get a couple of the bourbons that you recommended or the rye,
80 to 100
I'm
proof.
sipping, right? I'm not mixing this stuff with Coke and anything like that. I got my Glen. I'm sipping it. I'm probably. It sounds like I can go regular, unleaded, or I can go super unleaded.
High octane.
And that's defined by the proof. It's on the bottle, right?
Right. So you'll see, most people can see on the front label something like 80 proof, that's going to be 40% alcohol by volume. So you just basically cut that number in half. And that's your alcohol content for, simplicity. So
Got it.
again, most of those bottles I listed off are going to be under 100 proof. That Evan Williams is going to be 100 proof, but most of those other ones are between 80 to 100.
Got it. Got it.
And that's what I mean. Just something that's not going to blow your socks off, light your tongue on fire, but help you ease into things,
Right.
test the water.
Right.
And
it's probably like anything else, right? You and I, for instance, may not like the same drink,
right?
Whether it tastes funny or it's too sweet or whatever. So you just got to figure out which one you like,
right?
The best.
And not what someone tells you to like, or
right,
not like.
And again, we're not talking about mixing right now. We're talking about developing a palate for something that you like, a category within the whiskey that you like. We're certainly not talking about, right? We're not talking about fill up your Glen with 2 ounces and shoot it, right? We're not. This is not
appreciate it,
right?
Yeah.
Kind of roll into it a little bit easy, and okay, that's cool.
Yeah, when I first started this journey, I really, and I find a lot of people feel the same way. I did not like rye whatsoever, and it's gone full 180. I love rye now. So
And
the other thing is your palate is ever changing. Something you liked a year ago, you may not be as drawn to a year later, or just given some air, things open up, and not always for the better. Just sitting in the bottle.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know some of the I remember being around people that love to drink Manhattans when I was traveling a lot for work. Finish off the night with a Manhattan, and it was the classic with the rye, in the Manhattan. All right, interesting. All right, so I want a fun fact, and I may have already tipped the listeners off to the fun fact because the title of this episode is "Do you spell whiskey with an E?"
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Right?
So yeah, whiskey, believe it or not, because again, backtracking towards bourbon, there's all these rules and regulations around it, kind of like the FDA has with food and drugs, obviously. Whiskey, believe it or not, does not have to have an E.
Interesting.
So it is legal either way. There is no difference in terms of the eyes of the law.
Right.
It, I believe, comes from a Gaelic origin, which makes sense. You think about Irish immigrants coming over and kind of spelling things one way versus the rest of the world spelling it a different way. So fast forward, in the US, we use an E typically. In Ireland, they use an E typically. So
Whoa.
Irish whiskey, American whiskey, or whiskey from America, you typically see an E. There are some exceptions, but there's some crafty distilleries out there. Dickel, Tennessee whiskey, pay close attention, does not have an E.
Okay.
And that's not a crafty distillery. Now, whiskeys that do not have an E typically come from Scotland, Japan, Canada. So you see Crown Royal, look at Crown Royal, no E. Fun fact.
Wow, how about that? So you can go either way.
You can.
It could be cool.
Yeah.
I bet you, drop the E and I bet you get a lot of questions.
You do. I've been on a lot of tours where that's their fun fact.
Awesome. I'd love to talk about tours at another time.
Yeah, or barrel picks. I've done some barrel picks.
Yeah. That's very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Wyatt, anything? Did we miss anything? Like this was more of an introduction, right, for the listeners?
Yeah. Fundamentals.
Yeah.
Have fun with it. Taste the rainbow. You know. Have fun with it. Don't go
crazy.
Don't be afraid to mix it. I always tell the story about getting Chase his first Blanton's. That was he needed to have that bottle. You hear about it a lot. It's cool shape. It's got the horse on the top. First thing he did when he came home, poured it in some Dr. Pepper. So this is a no judgment zone. We just like to have fun.
Right. I can picture your face right now when he did that.
Yeah. I mean, to each their own.
Awesome. Well, Wyatt, I want to thank you for starting things off on the whiskey trail.
course.
Maybe that'll be our next. We get together again and we can talk about some of the different places you've gone when you did the whiskey trails and things like that.
Memphis is on it.
Memphis, love Memphis. Got some distilleries in Memphis.
Old Dominic.
All right, here we go. All right. Well, listen, thanks again. Appreciate it, and look forward to the next time.
Cool. Happy to be here.